Open Heart, Open Mind. Welcome to the Sattva channel, an online official platform of the Sattva project. Myself, Samisha Kamble.
I'm Sherab Wong, the co-founder of the Dharma Project.
Today, before we start our session, let us thank our sponsors, our media partner and StreamYard sponsor, Durian Asian and Durian FM. And we would also like to thank our main personality behind the screen who is managing every technical issues there, his brother Chong. So, Brother Chong, would you please like to come on screen and say hello to everyone?
Hello, everyone. Nice to see you all again. And please do like and share our broadcast tonight so that more people can benefit. And for those watching in YouTube, please like, share, and subscribe. And now back to you guys. Thank you.
Thank you, Brother Chong. So today we are going to have a part two of War, Peace, and Dharma Practice, which is a topic discussed in Mindful Politics series. So before we start our program, as we always do, let us get an introduction of our moderator and speakers. So today our program will be moderated by Brother Sherab Wong, who is the co-founder of the Sattva project. So, Wong Ching-wei, or preferred to be called as Sharab, his Tibetan name meaning wisdom, is a freelance writer, speaker, and translator. He has been working and translating for many spiritual teachers in various talks, retreats, seminars, and workshops since 1990s. He shares his experiences and knowledge on various schools of Tibetan Buddhism, Zen, synchronicity, and basic principles in integral spirituality, as well as creative visualization through his meditation and spiritual workshops. His published works of translation included Introduction to Buddhism and Tantric Meditation by His Holiness the Dalai Lama, Happiness is a State of Mind by His Holiness the 12th Gyalwang Drukpa, Three Teachings by Jetsuma Tenzin Palmo, The Heartful Path of Awakening by Khenpo Jamyang Karma Gelsen. So thank you for joining us, Brother Sharab, today. Uh, so he will be moderating our program today. So a warm welcome to you.
Thank you, Samisha Kamle. And today is also your birthday. On behalf of the Sarva team, we'd like to wish you happy birthday. And may you be well and happy. May you be successful in your study and life. Thank you, Samisha.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. So our first contributor of this program is Dr. Oleg. So before becoming a Buddhist volunteer translator, Oleg was a civic activist and civil servant in Ukraine, a new democracy of Eastern Europe which experienced two democratic revolutions. After the start of the local military conflict in eastern Ukraine 8 years ago, Oleg and his NGO team promoted resilience, critical thinking, and volunteering among thousands of students in the conflict affected regions. Now when his country is experiencing a full-scale Russian invasion, Oleg shares his experiences of applying the advices given by Buddhist teachers in facing the war mindfully, fearlessly, and compassionately, not only from the news but also from one's window. Coming from a mixed Russian-Ukraine ethnical background himself, Oleg speaks about the need of reconciliation and how to heal the psychological wounds of the war from a Dharma perspective. A warm welcome to you, Dr. Oleg. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you.
So our second contributor of this program is Evgenii. Evgenii completed his first MA degree in political science from the highest school of economics, Russia, but then decided to change completely his sphere of interest and studied Buddhology and Tibetan language. He finished the BA program at Changchun Yeshe Institute, Nepal, which includes traditional Buddhist philosophy classes taught by the monastic teachers of Shedrap Ling Monastery, as well as history and Tibetan language classes conducted by both Western and Tibetan teachers and language partners. Afterwards, completed the MA program at Hamburg University, Germany, under the supervision of Professor Dorji Wangchuk. The program focuses on studying classical Tibetan texts and producing critical editions of them by employing the philological approach. Since 2007, he has been working as an interpreter for the Western and Tibetan Buddhist teachers, in particular Chokyamar Rinpoche, Mingyu Rinpoche, Lama Zopa Rinpoche. He is the editor-in-chief of the Russian section of the website Study Buddhism, run by the scholar and translator Dr. Alexander Bursin. A warm welcome to you, Dr. F. Kenil. Thank you for joining us in this
Oh,
program.
thank you.
Okay, thank you, Samisha. So we'll start the dialogue directly. Okay, so we are talking about war, peace, and Dharma practice as our first episode mentioned. So I would like to start my question today by asking Oleg, what is the situation now in Ukraine regarding the war? What is happening now at the moment? Yeah.
Now it is over 4 months since the full-scale Russian invasion started, and it was planned just for 3 or 4 days, as the Russian captured soldiers say, because they didn't have more food with them, just for 3 or 4 days to capture the capital and capture the country. But then, due to surprising resistance of Ukrainian people, a lot of volunteered to go to the army and defend their country. Uh, Now we have this fifth months of the war started, and the invasion didn't move far as it was planned. But the problem is the huge difference between the capacities of Ukraine, which is much more small country than Russia, and the Russian military, which every day send missiles, cruise missiles from uh,
Mm-hmm.
thousands of kilometers here
Mm-hmm.
into towns and cities. And where I am staying now, in the capital city, Kiev, we had people killed because of the Russian missile hitting a residential building in the center of the city. And by the way, there was even Russian citizen among wounded who was living there. So
Mm-hmm.
the Russian idea, I mean, we are not talking about Russian people. We are talking about those who made the decision to invade.
Mm-hmm.
Their idea to protect Russian speakers here is so ridiculous because actually Russian speakers in those Russian speaking regions are the majority who die now because of these cruise missiles hitting their houses, or their uh, schools. Now hundreds of schools and hospitals have been completely ruined. uh, so this is what we are experiencing here. And about each more than half of Ukrainian children had to move to other regions or countries, and it is the biggest influx of millions of refugees since the World War II. about more than 10 million people displaced, and it is continuing. So this is the first what I can share from within the country.
And is this war or this invasion was supposed to be end within 3 days, but it lasts for more than 5 months now, right? For nearly half a year now.
Yes, the
5 months.
5 months started now. Yes, a few
Yes.
days ago.
And then would it be better if the invasion ended in 3 days rather than prolonging so much of time? What do you think so? What do you think?
Yes, um, I can explain. When the Russian troops came to the outskirts of the city where I stay, what happened when they capture a town? 100% of all flats in the residential buildings are looted. All people who are there, actually, there were some of my relatives there at the outskirts of Kiev, were taken hostage by the military, Russian military, and then when the uh, when they retreated and left this area, more than 1,000 people were found shot dead on the streets or in their apartments. So it means that if no one would stop them coming to other places in Ukraine, then it would be more killing and looting and all the atrocities that we are experiencing now. The UN judge for war crimes is here in Ukraine, and they started this procedure of official investigation of the war crimes committed against Ukrainian civilians. And we can look deeper why it was possible. It was possible because for many years there was a huge media campaign in Russia on the state-run media, which dehumanized Ukrainians and questions the right to existence of Ukrainian nation and country. So that's why the Russian soldiers who just were brought up with this all propaganda, when they came here, they don't value the life of people if they are Ukrainians. So that's why this huge human loss of life is been inflicted.
Okay. Yeah. Thanks, Sole, for your perspective. And Evgeny, I would like to ask you from the perspective from your side as a Russian, what is your feeling or response towards what is happening at the moment? From 5 months ago compared to 5 months ago, your feeling and thoughts, and how about your feelings and thoughts at this current moment about this war?
So at the very beginning, I had lots of anger and resentment, and I have to say that I was prepared that this is going to happen. I was quite aware that this is about to happen, and at that moment, I had been reading some um, professors, journalists, those people who are involved into politics science, whom I know from my first education in the High School of Economics. And many of them were quite unaware that there is going to be military operations, so-called. And I was trying to tell them, there is going to be a full-scale war. And at that point, already beginning with November or December or something like that, the Russian troops were gathering in this, western southern part on the border with Ukraine. And it was more or less clear that there is going to be something, that they are not just going to, to practice and go back as they did in May of the previous year. And then I was trying to warn people that we should not take this lightly and that this is going to be a huge conflict. So on one hand, I was prepared. On the other hand, I was very much angry when they actually crossed the border and they did this, they made this decision, and Putin was saying some, bullshit about all this, how he explains his motives, why they are going to do that. And I had lots of anger towards Putin and other Russian officials about that.
Okay.
So my
I
next,
actually,
yeah,
I was very happy
yeah.
to hear that. I'm very happy to hear that you admit that you have emotions, and that emotion is anger. So may I know the anger is towards a certain particular person, a country, or just simply humans stupidity?
I understand what you mean by human stupidity in general, but
Mm,
in this
mm,
particular moment, at that particular moment, around 21st of February, when there was this, big speech by Putin, and then on the
yeah.
24th, when they crossed the border,
Mm,
I had a very particularly aimed anger at our, government officials and Putin in
I see.
particular.
Okay. Mm-hmm. Okay. This okay.
And then, of course, I had to, as a Dharma practitioner, I had to work with these feelings. And I had
Mm,
many other feelings as well after that,
mm-hmm,
because I was very active in social networks and I'm not active in social networks anymore. I had many
mm-hmm,
discussions with the Ukrainians, with the
yeah.
Russians, and with Western people. I had many
Mm,
quarrels and conflicts with them.
mm,
And I already start to have, anger towards those people. And then I realized that I have to quit these quarrels and these conflicts, about what is going on. Then
uh-huh,
I had many emotions towards the Western leaders as well, because I find their response not really wise, and
mm-hmm,
because I suffered myself from certain economic problems that began when they started to impose sanctions on everyone in Russia, not just on those who actually did something to participate in the conflict and to, to help the invasion, but to everyone in Russia,
mm,
including myself. And I'm dependent on certain, connections with the Western countries,
mm-hmm,
and I started to have negative emotions towards them, And then I
mm-hmm,
tried again to apply Dharma methods to calm my mind. And
mm,
for some period of time, I was relatively calm and peaceful. I think I found some calm and harmony. But
mm-hmm,
recently, I started to read more news, and
mm,
I found that this conflict is just going on and on and on, because my initial guess and my initial hope was
mm-hmm,
that after several months of the conflict, there will be actually some solution, and that in the beginning of summer, the conflict will be over. But
mm,
it's not over, and it's not going to be over like just like that. And now
yeah.
I'm fully realized that this conflict can last for years. And at this point, I start to have lots of anger and anxiety again, And now I
Mm-hmm,
have to deal with them again,
yeah.
because now I am around the same point where I was in February.
Wow. Okay. Okay. That's interesting as well. You say you're back to the same point where you started. Yeah, your emotional state, right? And um, okay, that's a good start for us to discuss about peace and Dharma practice today. But how about you, Ole? Did you when the situation further develop until today? Are you feeling more hopeful or more helpless or more what kind of emotional state that you're in now? I mean, yeah, do you feel hopeful and do you feel positive about the further development or still remain the same?
I didn't expect that Ukrainians would be so resilient,
Mm,
and that they would be able to mobilize all the resources. A lot of volunteers started to help the wounded, to heal those who are in hospitals, to take care of the children who lost their parents. So it was an amazing, it became an amazing example of how this inner goodness, which is inherited in all human beings, can be brought up when we have this great challenge. Uh, so for Ukrainians, it is a point when when we started to defend the country much more than before. I'm speaking not in terms of even not only military, but also in terms of general mood in the public became very much supportive of the all the efforts that the government does, the president who didn't flee from Kiev despite Americans and British ask him to come to their soil and receive political asylum or form the government in exile. So because of that brevity of the president, people also became more brave and more resisting. Uh, it's one thing. The other thing is that we experienced the change of the mood in the Russian-speaking areas, which due to historical um, roots were speaking the same language as Russia. They were following Russian news very often and so on. But now everything that changed. So even in those bordering regions, which are still uh, free from Russian invasion, local government which were pro-Russian, they started to implement some measures to promote everything pro-European, everything Ukrainian. And also, I want to say that what is the major breakthrough to all the over 30 years of Ukrainian independence, we have been aspiring to be part of Europe after the break up of the Soviet Union. We had this chance, but nobody in Europe was seriously admitting us into the European family of nations, so to say, to the European Union. But when this huge trauma and huge suffering came here to Ukraine with the war, Europeans agreed to vote for Ukrainian official candidacy as the future EU member, and it happened just last week. So it brings great hope that in a few years' time we will be part of the European civilization for for in order to bring the European standards of, for example, caring about the nature, about not polluting, the waters, the rivers, everything. We need those standards. They are very helpful to improve the life. So we have this major breakthrough, the admission of Ukraine into the list of official candidates, future member states of the European Union.
At least there's some progress there. Yeah,
Yes, yes.
it's positive change.
Unfortunately, it is of course due to the war, but at least some fair understanding from the European partners is in place, and they now open the doors for Ukraine as a country to become member of this of European Union.
Okay, at least there's some positive change. And I also knew that the guardian angel of capital of Ukraine, Kiev, is Archangel Michael. Am I right?
Yes, yes,
Yes,
and
and that represent hope, strength, and security and protection, yeah, which is a good fighting spirit for Ukrainian, I think. Yeah.
yes, and you wouldn't believe, but on the first days of the resistance, actually maybe on the third day when the tide was turned back and we understand that there is hope that Kiev will not be captured, at that moment in the clouds on the sky, there is a picture I can show you next time in the next program. There was this Christian saint, Saint Michael, in a form of a cloud over Kiev, and it was
Yeah.
filmed and yeah, it was filmed and photoed.
Yes, I saw some sort of like a miracle. Like, yeah, I saw that as well. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Some of spiritual realm miracles happening also. Yeah. Okay. And Evgeny, there's a word say, no mud, no lotus. Okay. Beautiful lotus can only grow from a very muddy water. You know. So from this muddy water of chaos, fear, and as you say, anger, hatred, and panic attack, and helplessness and anxiety. You know, how do we grow the lotus of our Dharma practice? How do you cope with this? your emotions such as fear and anger. What kind of Dharma practice are you using to transform that kind of negative situation into a positive one? Yeah.
What I usually do when I face different difficult emotions is I try different methods. And for instance, as the Dalai Lama says, one of the method is just analytical meditation. We have to think about things, and in particular, Dalai Lama is giving advice to think about the emotions that we are having and about positive and negative consequences of different emotions. For instance, if we are angry, what are the consequences for ourselves and for others? So this is just a type of analytical meditation. And also, of course, there are many practices that are called Lojong, the mind training. But as Dr. Alexander Berzin points out very often, actually, it's not just about the training of the mind in a sense of training, like of memory or intelligence or something. When we hear the mind training, we might think that this is some sort of intellectual exercises for training the mind, the reason, and the memory. But actually, this is also about the heart, of course. And the Tibetan word "law" in Lojong basically means both. And also, the Tibetan word "jong" in Lojong means not only train but also to purify. So this verb means both, and we also can translate Lojong not only as a mind training, but also as a heart purification practices. So these are a set of practices, and they are based on Indian pieces of advice, Indian instructions, and Indian teachings that come from the Indian master Atisha, who came to Tibet, and he received them in Sumatra from his teacher Sarlimpa. So there are many different texts that deal with this. This is the genre of the literature. There are many texts that deal with how we can train our mind. And these texts, they give some sort of advice in terms of our behavior. For instance, if you are in this kind of situation, you behave like this, or you don't behave like this. Like, for instance, there are these four, what are called the four difficult types of exercise. Like when you are insulted, don't insult back. When you are beaten, don't beat this person back, and so on. And at the same time, there are many instructions which don't really speak about how we should behave, but only speak about our mind, how we should train our mind, and how we should protect our mind. So what I usually try to do in this kind of situations is I try to find in this material, and this is a huge material, and there are many Tibetan texts that elaborate on the Indian teachings on, Lojong. Lojong, of course, is a Tibetan term. And there are many texts, and there are many instructions given by contemporary teachers as well. And I try to find something relevant, something there that can help me to deal with this situation.
Okay, and it's like when you say that people hit you, you don't respond. You just be patient and accept it with total tolerance. That kind of thing. It's almost like the Christian, Christian sermon about when people hit you on the right cheek, you just let him hit the on the other cheek. Something like that. But some viewers might think that this is completely stupid. You just accept the violence from others with total acceptance, and then it done nothing to help to dissolve the resolution for this kind of people. And also, like, maybe I'm also maybe that there's some Russian friends who are Buddhists of your friends who also support the Russian invasion to Ukraine. So what can first is that to answer this question, first question, how do you answer this question? Secondly, for those your Russian people who support the war, especially your Buddhist friends, what would we like to say to them?
So answering your first question, I would make a distinction between two types of things. First is how we work with our mind, and second is what we do. Lojong teachings, they are mostly about how we protect our mind from negative emotions.
Mm-hmm.
And then what we do, let's say on social level, what we do in the society, kind of some activist work we do, some political work we do, the
Mm-hmm.
engaged Buddhism,
Yeah.
sphere or direction or movement.
Yes.
So there are two types of things, and these are two different spheres, because if we try to behave, to do something in the society, like if we want to contribute to the society, for example, we want to try to solve some conflict, I think from the Buddhist point of view, our aim is to do that with a very good positive motivation. So, for instance, if there is some conflict and we want to pacify the conflict, we do that with the compassion
Mm-hmm.
towards everyone who is involved, even
Mm-hmm.
if we do some sort of forceful actions. So you probably know, and you probably have heard many times, that in the bodhisattva vehicle, in the bodhisattva teachings, it is said that you can practice forceful actions, but
Yeah.
only with the motivation of compassion. So there
Oh,
are two
that's
different things. First is how we work with our own mind,
yeah.
and then after we are successful with that, and we overcame our own negative emotions, then we can try to make contribution to the outer world.
Okay, that's a very beautiful response from you. Yeah, that means you inside you can be still and peaceful, but outwardly our behavior, our action can be also passionate and radical and productive. Am I right to say so? Yeah.
If they're productive, yeah, if they're
Yes.
productive, because in many
Yeah.
cases we don't really know what will be of help, and that's another very complicated
Mm-hmm.
problem. You probably know this famous Shantitel quote, that if there is a problem and you can solve it, you
No need to
need to
worry.
try to solve it, and
Yeah.
you don't need to worry about it. If you
Yeah.
cannot solve it, then
You
you
won't
don't
spoil
need to
worry.
worry about it as well. And I have a
Yeah.
friend of mine who is not a Buddhist, and when I
Uh,
told him this quotation, he was kind of not very happy, and he told me, there are many cases when we don't know if we can or cannot do anything. And
yeah.
this is the quite a point. In many cases, we don't know how to help. We don't know if our actions will help, or maybe they will be detrimental to the situations.
I'll
I
be
don't
back to
have
that
the
question.
answer to that.
I will back to that question when we don't know what to do, how to decide what should we do. Okay, and then in other words, Evgeny, you are saying that inside we should be like compassionate Avalokiteshvara, children is very peaceful, very kind. Yeah? But outwardly we can be a Mahakala, who is also a manifestation of radical compassion. Am I right? Are you saying this? Yeah.
I would say this is allowed. However, it is very important not to allow the opposite situation. When
Mm,
even if we're trying to do peaceful actions or
mm,
neutral actions, and
mm.
inside we're full of hatred, then it doesn't
Yes.
work. And the
Yes.
problem
Yes.
is, of course, that there is, unless we are really developed on the path, we would probably have at least a little bit of hatred. And this is kind of a problem. This hatred can spoil any type of actions that we do. You
Mm,
know,
mm, mm,
this is a problem.
mm. And for you, Evgeny, what's the main point, like 7 points of mind training? Which point you use when you face tremendous anger or hatred in your mind at that very particular moment? Any points that you can remember, or what kind of antidote you are applying
Um,
towards that moment?
I
Yeah.
will tell you my favorite point. I don't know if it will be appropriate or not, and if it will sound good or not. But my
Mm,
favorite point from the particular text of the 7 point my training is that we are supposed to rely on the happy state of mind.
mm,
And actually, I started to pay more attention to the Lojong practice after I met with the Italian-French monk Olivier Rossi, who came with the Lama Sopa Rinpoche, and I had to translate for him. I mean, I had the privilege of translating for him. And
mhm,
at that point, I suffered from somewhat like depression, and I used to live in the West, in Germany, and it was a difficult period of my life, and I probably was quite unhappy. So this
mhm,
monk, Venerable Olivier Rossi, he saw
mhm.
that, and he tried to explain to me that I should pay more attention to the Lojong practice, and to pay attention at what is there going on in my mind that makes me unhappy. Because,
Mm,
like 7 point my training text says,
mm,
we are supposed to first achieve some sort of stable, psychologically, it doesn't say psychologically, but I add this from myself. We are supposed to achieve some sort of stable state of mind when we are at least neutral, or better, when we are happy. And from this point, we can help others. If we are terribly unhappy and we are disturbed by things that going around us, if we are overwhelmed by anger, anxiety, and so on, we will not be able to practice Dharma, from certain point of view. So first we should try to find happiness, and then we apply different points from Lojong to be able to reach at least the neutral state of mind. Of course, in the radical, when this kind of catastrophic situations happen, it is very difficult and maybe impossible to be happy. But at least I think we have to try to find some methods in the Lojong or other Buddhist teachings that can help us at least to be in the more or less neutral and stable state of mind. And I know from the experience of my Ukrainian friends, including Oleg, it is possible. I see people, in social networks who are from Ukraine and from those cities in Ukraine who are under the attack right now. But they are behaving very calmly. They're not blaming, they're not criticizing, they're not posting different, shit posts on Facebook, and instead they share Dharma teachings and Dharma advice every day. And I'm very amazed by this, because I'm not sure if I would be in these situations, I probably would tend to lose my mind a little bit and probably would go a little bit unstable. But I see Ukrainian people who are quite stable emotionally.
Okay, that's good. That's a good one. So again, Evgeny, which point again? The 7 points of mind training. Can you repeat the point that is most useful to you?
There, Langri Tangpa, Kishachikawa, sorry, he says at some point that you should rely on the states of mind that are positive, or rely on the paths that are positive.
Positive mindset. Okay, yeah. Thank you.
Yeah.
And back to Dr. Oleg Yatsenko. Again, what kind of practice you are using? I know that you are facing tremendous fear and threat to your own danger every day, yeah, in your life now, yeah, since 5 months ago. So, which Dharma practice you found most useful for your peaceful state of mind?
Also Lojong, and
Oh.
Evgeny said that it can be not explained as not mind training, but as heart purification practices. But from my side, I would like to stress that Lojong also can be used as attitude training. So we actually change our attitudes toward the situation if we cannot change the situation.
Mm.
And the same great Tibetan masters experienced themselves when they said that the ordeals and hardships that they had living in Tibet and staying in India and in other countries, this was a major breakthrough in their Dharma practice, which inspired them to not just to take for granted what they had before, this access to the wisdom of Dharma, but to apply it more practically.
Mm.
The same for me. I like this advice, like to remember this advice, to think about it. And there is another student of a great master, Patawa. One was the author of the 7-point mind training, and the other was Langri Tangpa, who was the author of another Lojong text, 8 points of mind training. This in this 8-point, which say how to be more compassionate, basically. So they say about very interesting topic that if we find those people who inflict hardships and who so we perceive them as our teachers. The other point here is that when whatever situation we have we should first of all check our mind and see if we can use some methods to deal with disturbing emotions. So whatever situation we have, we just remember, here we can use this method to deal with some afflictions, and then we apply it. And the other point here is always to remember about is in the last of the 8 points, always to remember about 8 worldly concerns and not be following them, to find other priorities in life than to follow those 8 concerns.
Okay. And among these 8 verses or 8 points, Dr. Ole, which point you found most useful for your current situation? Which point you find most practical for you to train your mind into?
I think the point which I said about the third one, I think, about always feeling where is this disturbing emotion and applying the antidote.
I see.
It is universal. Actually, it is in the last but one Bodhisattva practices again spoken about this. Always to keep keep looking into our mind and feeling and finding these disturbing emotions. So it's everywhere in all Lojong texts. This major point.
Okay. Besides, we are talking about specific Buddhist terms now. So for some audience who are non-Buddhist or new beginners in the Dharma, so would you like to explain what do you mean by the 8 worldly conditions or the 8 worldly concerns? Maybe we start with Evgenii.
I have heard a little bit different sets, but basically these 8 are divided into 4 pairs, so 4 sets of 2. And generally speaking, people tend to look for the first, and they want to avoid the second. For instance, they want pleasure and they want to avoid pain. And then the second, is discussed, is sometimes explained as, hearing good news and knowing that everything is going well, and as the opposite, hearing bad news and things don't going as we want them to go. And then hearing the next one is, hearing praise and being praised, and the opposite is being criticized. And what is the fourth one? The gain, getting
Loss.
something, and the opposite is to losing something or not to getting something. So ordinary people, those who are not masochists, they're striving for the first of the pair, so for the success, for gain, for praise, for things going how they want, and for pleasure. And they want to avoid the second. And then masochists, they are the opposite. They want pain and they want blame, and they try to avoid the first. But for the Tibetan tradition, basically it did not make much sense, because as His Holiness the Dalai Lama explains, Tibetan people don't really have much problems with the self, how do you call it, with the negative attitude towards oneself, with the hatred. Whether Western people, they might have it, So for the Tibetans, basically, of course, each Tibetan, as His Holiness the Dalai Lama says, wants praise, gain, pleasure, and not the opposite. But so in any case, the advice is to make our attitude more even, to make it more equal, and to accept whatever we meet, whether it is praise or criticism, with with the same attitude.
Okay. Can you briefly run through with us what are the 7 points in the short form? 7 points of mind training. What are the points, one by one?
Actually, 7-point mind training is a little bit long text, because, for instance, point 6 contains 18 pieces of advice, and point 7 contains 22 practices that we are supposed to practice. So this 7, they actually are not 7, but many more. But briefly speaking, so it is very difficult, to divide and subdivide them. But very briefly speaking, the text begins with the preliminary that Geshe Chikawa says, first train in the preliminaries, And by the preliminaries, there are different traditions and different explanations. Some say that preliminaries are shamatha and vipassana, and some say that preliminaries are the uncommon preliminary practices, namely the pondering on death and impermanence, precious human rebirth, karma and cause and effect, and faults of samsara. And then, what can be called, I guess, the second point, Geshe Chikawa speaks about meditating on the absolute or ultimate truth, because he follows the tradition where the deepest truth, the absolute truth, is explained before the conventional or the relative truth. There are two traditions. First is to explain the voidness or emptiness first, and then you explain the method, the bodhicitta, love and compassion meditation second. And there is the tradition where you do it vice versa. You first begin with the relative truth, and you give all the methods, the love and compassion and bodhicitta practices first. And then only when, the person is trained already in this, then you move on and you explain emptiness or voidness. So Geshe Chikawa, he follows the first approach, which is supposed to be for the people with sharp faculties, where the ultimate or deepest truth is explained first. So then he says a few words about voidness or emptiness, and he gives this kind of advice. For instance, try to experience everything as a dream, which really indicates of a type of dream yoga that you have in Tibetan Buddhism. So which is based basically on this Buddha's approach to how you should perceive everything from the voidness point of view. You should perceive things as a dream, as illusion, as a reflection in the mirror, as a rainbow, and so there are eight examples of illusion. Then only Geshe Chikawa speaks about bodhicitta, about relative bodhicitta, how you develop it. And these teachings are somehow connected with this 7-point cause and effect method for developing bodhicitta, where you first develop equanimity, and also Geshe Chikawa speaks about equanimity first towards the three types of objects, which is those that you like, those you don't like, your friends, your enemies, and the strangers, those that you have neither like or dislike. And he says that you need to practice equanimity towards these three types, of people. And this is very difficult in this kind of situation when then you really have enemies, somebody who hates you, somebody who attacks you, because according to this bodhicitta teachings, you are supposed to have equanimity to those. You cannot hate anyone if you want to develop bodhicitta, which is based on equal love and compassion to each person, to every person, to everyone, and to all sentient beings. Literally, you have to have this equal attitude to them at the first place. You cannot allow yourself to hate, the government officials or something like that. And then after this equanimity and bodhicitta, parts of this text, then also Geshe Chikawa speaks about what I just mentioned. There are this he speaks about criteria, how to understand that we have achieved something, and he says that we are supposed to be the main witness. We should judge our own success and not ask anyone else, including our lama, our master, to give the judgment whether we are developed or not. We should guard our mind, and we should evaluate our own progress. And also he says that there he speaks that we are supposed to maintain the happy state of mind, and it is supposedly one of the signs of our progress. And besides that, there is also this advice on the practicing, the practice called Tonglen in Tibetan, where we are supposed to take the sufferings of others and we give them our joy, happiness, our virtue, and so on. And this practice of Tonglen is probably based on Geshe Chikawa explanation, because he also says that you should combine this practice of taking the others' suffering and giving them our virtue. You should combine it with the breath. And usually the way how modern teachers, Western and Tibetan, explain this practice is exactly this way, because I mean, there is already the basis for this type of practice in the more ancient texts, like in Bodhisattva, Bodhisattva Charyavatara by Shantideva, where he speaks of another way to train our mind and developing bodhicitta, which is known as the method for equalizing and exchanging our attitude towards self and other. But here with the Tonglen practice, Geshe particularly says that you combine this giving and taking with breathing. And probably this, the Tonglen tradition, how we know it, is mostly based on this text by Geshe. And then after that, there is this last points where Geshe gives different pieces of advice, 18 and 22. And there are different practices where he says that you should always try to train, develop bodhicitta, like try to develop it in the morning, in the daytime, and in the evening. You should try to before each before at the beginning of each action you should develop good motivation, then you do the beneficial action itself, and at the end you dedicate the merit. There is this famous advice that you should always blame, that your main enemy is self-cherishing attitude, and you should always blame yourself. I mean, not yourself, but your self-cherishing attitude. And again, it might be difficult for the Western people who might suffer from the low self-esteem, because if people already have lots of blame, for them it will be very difficult, to take all the, to put all the blame on their own self-cherishing attitude. And maybe they don't even have the much self-cherishing attitude at the beginning. But this is another, this is the psychological problem that Dr. Berzin sometimes discussed. And again, it is based on His Holiness the Dalai Lama being very much surprised when he learned that Western people have a big problem with hatred, with the self-hatred, which Dalai Lama, as a Tibetan, he never experienced. And he says in the Tibetan society that would be impossible. So when we hear this kind of piece of advice that we have to put all the blame on our self-cherishing attitude, I would say that Western people who have a low self-esteem should be very careful with that. But there are many other very important pieces of advice in this text, such as um, don't 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 hit the weak point of other person. Don't
The
wait.
soft spot. Soft spot. The
Yeah,
soft
yeah.
spot. Yeah.
Don't attack the soft spot. Don't attack from the ambush. When you wait, when you can attack another person and then try to do something bad for him or her. Don't feel joy when other people fail. If you can get something from that, don't wait for this kind of situations. It says, don't turn don't turn back, don't turn over the amulet, which is, uh, don't practice dharma with the improper motivation when your actions are similarly good but your motivation is spoiled. Or different kind of pieces of advice, like uh, try to train your mind internally, but externally just be normal person. Like, don't try to make a big show out of a practice, and your practice is your own personal. You do it inside of yourself. You don't advertise, and you don't try to look some special. So there are many good pieces of advice. So altogether, more than 40 in this text.
Okay, thank you for that. And do you find any particular mind training in the 7 points of mind training which is so helpful that you can transform your anger towards Mr. P Putin?
Well, a little bit I covered this in the previous meeting, is that if I myself want to be happy, and I understand that I, let's say, misbehave, or I make troubles for other people, basically because I'm unhappy, when I'm in a bad mood, if you speak in the ordinary language, when I'm in a bad mood, I tend to cause troubles to others. And it is the same for anyone. those people who make lots of troubles for our whole world, for our whole planet, for other people in other countries, they do it because they are unhappy. They don't know what we would call in Buddhism the sources of happiness or the cause of happiness. They understand it incorrectly. They think that if they steal or kill or attack or do this kind of stuff or lie, and make all this propaganda, they think that they will be happy if they do that. But from the Buddhist point of view, it's not like that. And so if I wish happiness to these government officials, I wish happiness, very sincerely, because I understand if they would be happier, if they would have more wisdom and knowledge, they would not behave in this way at the first place.
Yeah. Be happy first, then yeah. Okay. And how
And
about Ole?
yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Mhm.
Yeah. Continue, please. Evgeny, you want something to say?
One more very important point from the 7 point Lojong text is that when it speaks about this Tonglen practice, when we take other people's sufferings and we give them our pleasure and virtue and so on, our positive qualities, we do that with the people we like at the beginning, then with
Mm-hmm.
strangers, and then with the enemies.
Mm-hmm.
However, what is really important is that Geshe Chikawa says, at the beginning, start with yourself.
Mm.
So at the beginning, we develop the wish for ourselves to be happy, and we send ourselves this happiness, positive types of thinking, positive
Mm-hmm.
actions, and so on. First we do it with ourselves, and then when we can do it with ourselves, only then we can do it for others. We are not the
Mm-hmm.
martyrs who are
Mm-hmm.
trying to to send everything good to others, but
Mm-hmm.
we are very, very unhappy and stressed
Mm.
and angered and depressed and anxious person.
Yeah. So let us all pray that Mr. P will do that practice for himself as well. Yeah. Okay. Okay, Ole. I'll come back to you, Ole. So what 8 verses of my training? What are they? And which point is most beneficial to you?
Uh, I already spoke about 3 of them, and I would add the rest. In general, we are speaking here about the change of attitude towards others, so that we stop cherishing ourselves, and we get rid of egoism. Instead, we start to uh, value others more than ourselves. So it is the main point there. And by this, in one point, it's said that we should perceive others as our teachers. In another point, it's said that we should perceive others as gems, most precious things for our developing bodhicitta and so on. And also, there is a point of giving the victory to others, but of course, as I told, giving the victory to here in our case to the invaders would mean even more human life loss and even more devastation, as we saw in those cities and towns which came under those Russian military control.
Mm-hmm.
So this I cannot agree to give them victory, but we should say it not in this way, but maybe I would say to the Russian friends who uh, are somehow supportive to this propaganda. I would say to them that um, let's try to find how they can feel content that at least, for example, they have increased their um, feeling that there is less danger from NATO, because Ukraine at some point of negotiations with Russia agreed that it will not be a part of NATO. But of course, it was a miscalculation by the Russian regime, because 2 more states are going to join NATO because of this war. So
Yeah.
it was not helpful. But anyway, if they perceive NATO as a threat, and now Ukraine says that it will not be a part of NATO, um, in order not to irritate Russia once more, then let's uh, invite those Russians who need this security to be happy about that.
Okay, that's wonderful. Again, before we come to the next round of questions, I would like to ask a very short question to you, and hopefully you all, both of you give me a very short answer as well. So when during the moment of danger and fear, like for example, missile is sitting at your home now. So what at that moment, what is your mind thinking about, or who will come to your in mind first? Like for example, Dalai Lama or Tiananmen or certain Buddha images or deity. So at that moment of urgency, what will come to your mind in terms of Dharma practice and Dharma? Ole, maybe start with you. Short one. Who will think about when the missile is coming at your home there? So what kind of Dharma practice you will recall at that moment?
Um, I try to remember advices of my teachers, which is, of course, about developing bodhicitta in the first place, our
Mm-hmm,
aspiration to achieve Buddhahood to benefit others.
mm-hmm,
And I have heard blasts even today.
mm-hmm.
Um, so um, I try to keep that in mind.
Bodhicitta in mind, yeah. Okay. Any particular prayers that you will recite during that very crucial moment of danger and fear?
Uh, well, I'm in a very big city, so uh, mathematically, statistically,
Mm,
I'm not just now under such kind of threat as those who are in the eastern cities of Ukraine, and there
mm,
even my far relatives were killed
mm,
during the Russian bombardment of Mariupol.
mm,
So um, here in the capital city we have human life loss, but it's not as large scale in southern as it is in the east, where the
mhm,
Russian troops are more advancing
mhm,
now.
mhm, mhm. So you will not recite any prayer during this moment of danger? Any particular prayer that you would like to do, like when the danger is near you, what would you do? Yeah.
Generating bodhicitta is the
Okay.
main
Okay.
uh,
Main
prayer.
prayer. They use.
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
Thank you very much. And how about Evgeny? How about you? During the moment of
Well, at
urgency.
yeah, I mean, at the moment, I'm in a very different situation. But if I try to imagine something from the past when some emergency happened, but honestly,
Mm-hmm.
I never been to such a situation. Even when I
Yes.
used to live in Kathmandu and there was an earthquake, I left Nepal 1 month or something before. So I'm
Mm,
a lucky person who not, at least not yet, I have been to such an,
mm-hmm.
type of situation. But generally speaking, I usually, if something happens, I usually try to observe my mind and see what is there inside. I
Mm,
try to put my attention inside, and I look into my mind, and I see my thoughts, I see my emotions, I see what's going on there, and
mm,
then after, after a while, I start to work with what I have seen. I
mm,
apply these types of analytical meditations. I think. I reflect on these concepts or emotions, and I try to use the methods that I have learned from the Dharma.
mm-hmm. Any
But
particular
in terms of the
prayers?
prayer,
Mm,
itself, since my main, sadhana practice is the Enigma one,
mm,
I tend to recite the Padmasambhava prayer.
okay.
But actually, I also recite Karmapa mantra, so Karmapa Chino mantra. So
Okay.
I don't only practice Nima practices. And of
Okay.
course,
That's.
just a prayer to my personal guru or gurus,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
just supplication to them.
Mm-mm-mm-mm. Okay, that's wonderful. That's wonderful. And okay, any particular book that you like to recommend to read, Oleg, in this crucial moment, any particular Dharma book or any verses that you would like to recommend to our audience?
I would recommend reading commentaries to the mind training texts,
Mm-hmm.
to each of them, to 8 verses to 7-point mind training, there are great commentaries published in different languages, including Chinese and others, on the Study Buddhism website.
Study Buddhism website.
Yes.
Can you tell us the address of the website? www.studybuddhism, is it?
Maybe Evgenii can tell, because he is the editor-in-chief of one of the sections of this website.
It is studybuddhism.com. Study Buddhism together, study and Buddhism, and then .com.
Studybuddhism.com. Okay, wonderful. So our audience, please, if you are free, please go and visit the website. Okay. How about Evgenii, you any book that you would like to recommend to our audience?
Yeah, I completely agree with Oleg. Lojang would be very good, and there are different commentaries by Dalai Lama, by Thupten Chodron, by Pema Chodron, and by Mingyu Rinpoche, by Dr. Alex Berzin. And also there is one interesting book. I don't know if I don't know its name in English, but it is written by His Holy. I mean, it's not written by His Holiness Dalai Lama. It is a very huge book on the Tibetan history that is done by American journalist who visited the Dalai Lama, and he asked him many questions. Oh, I don't have it here. It is published in Russian language with a title that can be translated as the history of Tibet, and the Dalai Lama is a co-author. So it is the dialogues between this journalist and the Dalai Lama, where Dalai Lama basically explains the whole history of the Tibet, beginning with the very beginning when the Tibet was founded, and with the different Tibetan kings, and until the Chinese invasion and what happened after that. So this is a kind of a long but a very interesting historical book, and the vision of the Dalai Lama on the particular political and historical problems.
So we see the tremendous negative impact done by this invasion, by Russian to Ukraine, and we know that we are living in the interdependent world where everyone and everything is connected to other things and other people. So I believe that there are some questions from the audience now. Brother Chong, would you like to display it on the screen? Yeah, the first question is from Ram. He asked, if you have a chance, please ask the justifiable on what they think and what action did they take for conflicts in other regions, such as Myanmar, Syria, etc., etc. Wondering this, as they are always conflict, but this one is getting much more attention, means Russian invasion on Ukraine. So what's your view? Maybe start with Ole. I mean, the world is paying so much attention to the Russian invasion of Ukraine, where they almost forgot about conflicts in the world, where there are many conflicts such as Myanmar, Syria, etc., etc. So, is it a bias from the global community, or this is what it's supposed to be?
It is huge contrast to what have been here since the World War II. There was no major wars in this part of the world which experienced the biggest human life loss in the 20th century, because World War I, World War II were here in Europe, and then the European Union was created. And former enemies like France and Germany became the best partners, and those who moved the project of European Union ahead. So it is great surprise for all this philosophy of not moving the borders, living in peace in Europe, never again inflicting such hardships to millions of refugees. So it is not a local conflict. It is just the numbers of refugees are these millions of people, much more than other conflicts before, for example, in Syria and so on. And also, it is very obvious that it is about Europe in general, because what happened actually, why Ukraine became so much a challenge to Russia, because during the democratic revolution, people went to the streets and demanded the turn from the non-democratic values to the European standards, standards in every sphere of life, human rights, ecology, protection of environment, everything. So it is the first time ever in the history that people on the streets with a European flag were killed by the police of the previous Ukrainian undemocratic regime. So it all started from the popular revolution, very much disliked by the Russian regime, because it was a challenge probably to them, because how it can happen. People went to the streets and changed the government, and the corrupt president ran away to Russia. And without even one window broken, the parliament and the government sided with the people. I mean, was taken by the democratic movement, and then Ukraine started to make all these reforms and introduce more protection of human rights, anti-corruption measures, everything, to be a modern, civilized European country. And this triggered the Russian regime to act, to stop it. So it's not just about two countries. It is about the civilization choice of a country, and the other country trying to hold it back and not allow its choice. But last week, when the European Union leaders voted to accept Ukraine to Europe, it means like we are having the victory for all this over 8 years of democratic process, shifting from the non-democratic past to the civilized and democratic future. So if Ukraine fails, it is setback to humanity in general, because it means that a democratically elected government and country living in as it wishes developing democracy can be just militarily invaded and ruined. So it is not just a question of one country, it is a question for humanity. If we in general, human beings, can help those who need to protect their homes, their cities from this missiles hitting, like in this city where I am, and so on today, as we told. So this is a very broad question, but of course we should never forget about other conflicts, and of course we should speak about them, and should support the people there, like in Myanmar, in Syria, everywhere. Never forgot about it, of course. But
Thank
you
you.
understand, it really civilization choice. What can humanity do in general? Is it possible to stop? And also this human, this huge problem of food. Ukraine was one of the main suppliers of food uh, to Africa and to Asia.
Yep.
But now Ukraine cannot export its agriculture products there, to actually the bread and basic food
Yep.
to those people, and then the hunger is underway already there, and some shortages of basic
Yes.
food.
Yes.
So it's
Yes.
really global problem, and if the
Yeah.
war would stop, we hope the Ukraine, which provides half of the UN um, uh, fund for those who are in hunger. Now Ukraine will be able to help the other countries with food.
Okay. Yeah.
So just
I
a
think
couple of
the whole world, including Malaysia, is also having facing the price rising. Increasing price of foods and their commodity. So due to this war, so this is a global issue. I agree with that. And then also, just like when we say Black Lives Matter, it doesn't mean all life doesn't matter. But at that particular moment, that particular time and space, we have to emphasize the movement of that particular country or region. Yeah. How about Evgeny, your answer to this question? And also to add on that question,
Yeah.
that other people also say that compared to Ukrainian refugee who run away from the country, they are more welcome than other refugees such as Syrian and all, because of their skin color. Probably they are white. Or what do you think about that? Is it a different treatment that we are focused too much on this issue rather than other important, other equally important issues in the world? Do you think so?
Uh, Beginning with your last point, actually, I have heard, but I cannot really prove it, but I have heard that nowadays in Germany, there are some problems with inviting more refugees from Ukraine because they already accepted so many refugees in 2016, 2015, and later that, German society is becoming more and more hesitant to accept if it can accept more refugees. And
Yeah.
for that reason, I would not say that, refugees from Syria and other countries were not welcome. They were welcome to Germany because when I went to Germany in 2015, I started my academic program there. It was exactly the period of time when there were many refugees, and there was this movement, refugee welcome movement,
Mm-hmm.
and on many at many places like in the university we had these banners which would say refugees welcome. And so in Germany they have really this tradition of nowadays welcoming everyone. But on the other hand, of course, there are people who feel that this is a little bit too much, this a little bit maybe more conservative, more reactionist people
Mm-hmm.
who are not so as open to welcoming refugees and who did not support Angela Merkel's course on accepting more refugees from the Middle East.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, Germany is more or less open to everyone. I don't think that the skin color matters in this case.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but yeah, about what was said before, there is not much to add. That's true. That, of course, I agree with the person who asked this question. There are always wars, and like in Africa, there is almost the constant wars, like in Sierra Leone and so on. We don't hear much about it, but there are countries that are permanently, in the state of war. At the
Mm-hmm.
same time, this crisis, the Russian invasion crisis, is
Mm-hmm.
getting more and more global, and it's quite. I mean, it's quite obvious. We could, we could have guessed about it from the beginning that first of all there is a risk of using nuclear weapons, and there is a risk of more and more, countries getting involved, and that the actual military actions would spread toward the Baltic countries, toward Finland, or toward Russia itself. So the problem is that this conflict might become a very long-lasting one. It might include, many countries that are actually participating and not only helping or not helping. And
Mm-hmm.
the risk of using nuclear weapons is basically, some people say that the whole world, the whole planet might be destroyed if, these government freaks are going to use the nuclear weapons.
Yeah. Okay, thank you for that. Brother Chong, there's a quote mentioned by, I think, Dr. Michael. Can you put that quote onto our screen there? Yeah, he says, the attitude of great poet is to cheer up slave and horrify despots by Walt Whitman. What a good. wisdom words. Yeah. And then the next one I would like to ask, there's a question by my friend through messages as well. He said that while the world believe that creating and using more weapon is not the solution to world peace, but at the same time, our Ukrainian president is asking the world to supply more weapons to Ukraine so that you can defend yourself. So we have a two kind of scenario here. So do we have to believe that uh, about this particular situation, we have to use more weapon? It's so sad that we have to use more weapon, and the world has to send more and more weapon to Ukraine to defend themselves. But at the same time, we believe that weapon or war is not the solution to this issue. So how do you reconcile this? Maybe you start with Evgeny first.
Well, I'm not a proper person to answer this question. Really, I'm a pacifist at the first place, and
Mm-hmm.
I understand this. I don't want to take any side here. I understand the problem that is, that you mentioned, but I only can express my sadness about the a related issue that even when this conflict will be over,
Mm-hmm.
the problem is that apparently many countries in our world are believing that the more weapons we are going to produce and have, the better. And that actually the politicians, the leaders of the countries, and also many people who believe in them, after this conflict is over, will be over, they will only think about how to try to make the world more secure
By
by
selling weapons, by
producing
selling
and
by
selling more
selling
and
weapons.
more
Yeah.
and more weapons, and by
Yeah.
producing better type of weapons that would be even more dangerous than before, including perhaps chemical, biological, whatever, this hydrogen, how do you call this,
Hydrogen.
the next
Yeah.
level, hydrogen
Yeah.
weapons and so on.
Yeah.
So
Yes.
the sadness here is that many people will feel that the lesson of this situation is the more weapons you're having, the better. And for me, this is really sad.
Mm-mm-mm. Yes. 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 We need more spiritual warrior who use the weapon of compassion. Yeah. To conquer the hatred and negative emotions rather than this. How about you, Dr. Ole? Do you have the same view or mm, practically speaking?
Um, of course, even in the secondary vows of a bodhisattva, there is an obligation, if needed, with a mind of loving compassion, to use some uh, methods which are
Yeah.
aimed at uh, stopping the bigger evil.
Mm-hmm.
It means self-defense here also.
Mm-hmm.
But unfortunately, people are not Buddhist practitioners. They don't have this in mind, and it is very difficult to fight back and not have the anger towards the enemy.
Mm-hmm.
So the only way out is to promote Buddhist values,
Mm-hmm.
and as wide as we can, and also Christian values, to pray for the enemy. Only in that way, even uh, our defense, Ukrainian defense against defending against the invaders, would not produce negative karma if we do it with compassion, with full understanding of the consequences, and with regret of
Mm.
any kind of loss of the human life, even of the enemies. This is the way out, to be mindful and always remembering that any human life loss is even of the enemies should be regretted.
Mhm.
So yes, we should be mindful about that.
Okay. And okay, what kind of help or practical action that you both hope the Buddhist community locally and globally to supply or to help you all? Maybe you start with Evgeny. I mean, start with your Russian Buddhist community. Are they supportive towards the war or against the war? And how? What would you like to say to them if they are supportive towards the war?
Well, as for the Russian community, as I mentioned during our previous meeting, my own friends do not support war, but maybe that's why they are my friends. I don't know. But I also know that there are different kind of people, and I have seen them on the social networks. I don't know the amount, honestly. And my advice to those who support the war is that please remember that if we don't commit certain negative actions such as killing or stealing or lying, but we rejoice in it, we according to the Buddhist teachings of karma, we accumulate the same negative karma as those people who commit these actions. So if
Mm-hmm.
we rejoice when we hear
Mm-hmm.
how soldiers kill others or destroy the cities,
Mm-hmm.
according to these teachings on the karma, if we rejoice in these actions, we accumulate a similar type of karma. So this is, my bitter advice. However, in terms of how we can help, well, there are two ways, I guess. One is, of course, to try to help those people who suffered from what happened, the refugees. If some people, come to the place where we live, to our district or country or whatever, not necessarily if we're in Russia, maybe if we're living in Europe. So I know that many communities in Poland, in Ukraine, and in other many Dharma centers, they accept people who run away from those cities that are under attack. So I know people who try to help refugees, and Dharma centers can help as well. It is a little bit difficult for Russian people to send money to Ukrainian people because their bank accounts might be blocked. But well, there are always ways to find somebody who can send money and these kind of things. And another way, of course, is how we can make our own Buddhist community more peaceful, more accepting, more tolerant, so that these problems with hatred, blaming each other, so all this negativity that is ruling this war and stands behind it, and the negativity that we sometimes see on social networks, we can try to work on ourselves within our community to try to make our Buddhist community an example of peace, harmony, and acceptance.
And Evgeny, since you are in Russia and you're quite vocal in expressing your political and religious view, so we hope that you um, be careful that side also to protect yourself. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. I'm not saying so many things, I
Mm-hmm.
made few different short publications on my social networks, but
Mm-hmm.
I'm not too active. I'm not too publical, so I express my opinion, but mostly to particular people, and I don't go to to protest because these
Oh.
days they imprison. I did protest a few years ago,
Mm-hmm.
when you would not go to jail for doing these things. But these
Oh.
days, honestly, we have also like the whole army of soldiers of our
Okay.
police. That if you
Okay.
go out and protest publicly, they will imprison you or just destroy your life and things like that. So I'm sorry to say I don't protest these days. But those people who know me personally, they know my position.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah. Just be careful. Yeah. Thank you. And Dr. Ole. Yeah. Unmute yourself, Dr. Ole, please. Ole, please unmute. Yeah.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes. So of course here we have all the rights and human rights and the right to freedom of speech, and
Mm-hmm.
our Facebook is uh,
Block.
not closed and blocked like in Russia. But
Mm-hmm.
on the territories which are taken by the Russian forces, you wouldn't believe the first thing they do, they block the Facebook, they block Instagram. So everything is not working there. No news can come there.
Mm-hmm.
So this is what is being done for already maybe more than a million of people, which is under now Russian military rule in some regions of Ukraine.
Mm-hmm.
So we can rejoice that we have this freedom of reaching the Facebook around the world in most countries. Yes, and we can still unite together to defend the values of ability to practice Dharma and ability to help each other, and we should be more compassionate even to the enemies. And
Okay.
this is the main point of also of all the old texts from Tibetan masters that we have been speaking about today.
And by the spirit of Archangel Michael as well, right? Yeah. Okay. Now, last question I would like to ask you. What is it possible for us to imagine? For a better future for both Ukraine and the world in terms of world peace. That we can learn from this invasion. You know, is there any positive things that we can learn from this this invasion? First maybe Evgeny, start with you.
That's a very difficult question to answer because personally, each of us can try to do different practices and try to, make our minds stronger. Uh, but on the level of the society and on the level of the world, personally, I don't see any positive sides. Even though sometimes they say that you can try to find the positive aspect or positive side in anything, and actually Lojong teachings very much are about that. That whatever
Yes.
happens, like there is this tradition. By the way, it is also part of the text by Gisha Chikava on the 7-point mind training. The tradition of taking the difficulties at the path. And there is also one very famous text written by the third Dodrupchen Tenpenima, I think Jigme Tenpenima, which explains how to take difficult situations on the path. What should we meditate on? But again, honestly speaking, this text mostly explains what we should personally meditate on, how we should concentrate, and what kind of positive aspects in the problems we can find to concentrate, for ourselves, for our spiritual path. But on the level of the society and the world in general, I think what is going on is really terrible. It gives a very terrible example of what can happen at any point, that anyone can just attack anyone, and there
As they
is no
wish.
solution.
As they wish.
I mean,
Nobody can block them.
yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, honestly, I don't see. I think this is just a terrible example, and I don't think we can learn, and we should not learn to do something like that. Definitely, the only idea that comes to my mind, maybe if the world will be able to find a solution at some point, and there will be some change. After the Second World War, we got the United Nations, for instance, as a possible structure to try to prevent these conflicts, but we see that it doesn't really work. Maybe after this conflict, the world, different countries together as international organizations, or will be able to find some solution. At the end, and they will be able to solve this problem. Maybe then can have a little bit of hope. But honestly speaking, there is not much reason for being optimistic at the point right now.
Okay. Yeah, it's hard to find a silver lining at this very moment. How about you, Ole?
I think, first of all, we should think about human dignity and this inner goodness that people have, even if they are functionaries of um, structure when they have to behave in a way, for example, the military, but still they have their dignity, their values, and they can hopefully try to enact them to remember that we are all humans, first of all, and we should be humane to each other, even in the military conflict, even the soldiers themselves. And when revolution happened here in Ukraine, it was called the Revolution of Dignity because at some point, even the officials of the previous non-democratic regime, they felt this dignity in their heart, and they said, no, we will not abide the rulings of that government. We will not kill people. So the killing stopped at the streets, and then and then it was called the Revolution of Dignity, when completely all the security services, police were left the city, the capital of Ukraine, and it became peace at some point.
Okay. Thank you for that. So last, I would like both of you to summarize what you have said. Any last suggestion from both of you? Yeah. Now let's start with Evgeny.
So in brief, I guess my main idea is that we have to, or maybe we want to, cultivate peace and happiness, beginning with ourselves, because we only are responsible for our own actions and for what is going on in our own mind. And it is very difficult or almost impossible to influence the actions of other people and what's going on in their minds. But we can work with our own mind, for example, with the Buddhist Lojong teachings or any kind of other psychological, philosophical, or religious ways. And we should try to be happy people at the first place, because then, if we are happy ourselves, we will only spread happiness towards the outside. We are not going to create problems and conflicts around ourselves because we're happy. And if we are happy, we will automatically wish other people also to be happy, and we will give and we will spread this happiness.
Yeah, that's very wonderful wisdom there. Thank you, Evgeny. And Dr. Ole.
I would like to thank everyone for speaking about my country. Despite it's so long now, the war is going on, and there is some fatigue about this. But still, we spoke about these problems, and all of us tried to apply what we learned from our Buddhist teachers to make the difference. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Ole. So there's no way to peace, but peace is the only way. And only can we do it inside out, be peaceful, be happy inside. Then we can only spread happiness and peace to people and to the country all around the world. Okay, we end our program here. Now may I invite Samisha to come in?
I hope you can hear me. Yeah. Thank you so much. Thank you.
We can
I would like to thank
we can
all
hear
our
you, but
panelists.
we cannot see you, Samisha.
You cannot see me? That is so
Yeah,
strange.
it's
Can you
okay.
see me now?
No, no. Yeah, I can. Yes.
Okay. Okay. So sorry for that. Yeah. So I would like to thank our panelist, Dr. Oleg, and yeah, and sorry, if I don't know to pronounce the name properly. Uh, and then I would also like to thank Brother Sherab for moderating this program. So thank you so much. I hope our audience has learned a lot from whatever uh, we have discussed in this program. Not only it was about war, peace, and dharma practice, but about lots of things in general. So thank you so much. Thanks to everyone. So for our upcoming events, I don't, as what I was informed, we will be taking a break of 2 to 3 weeks in the coming month. Brother Chong, can we please have the next slide? Yeah, okay. So before we conclude with the four great vows, I would like to invite our panelists for small dedication prayer from their side. So, Dr. Ulrich.
Благодаттю практики цієї, хай силу Ченрезіка я справджу, і усіх істот без винятку до цього стану приведу.
Thank you. Brother Sharad.
Oh, Okay, I will recite the Bodhisattva Charyavatara in Mandarin, two verses from it, and then I will say it in English. 愿成如意牛，妙品如意宝，明咒麒麟药，如意珠宝树，乃至有虚空以及众生住，愿无诸世间尽除众生苦。May I be the wishing jewel, the vase of wealth, a word of power, and the supreme healing. May I be the tree of miracles, for every being the abundant count. And now, as long as space endures, as long as there are beings to be found, may I continue likewise to remain to drive away the sorrows of the world.
Uh, okay. So, Brother Envy.
Пусть драгоценный пробужденный ум Бодхичитта возникнет во всех тех, кому он еще не возник, в ком появился, пусть не будет, а все более и более возрастает.
Yeah. So, let me recite the four great vows, and that's how we end our session. Sentient beings are numberless, we vow to save them all. Delusions are endless, we vow to cut through them all. The teachings are infinite, we vow to learn them all. The Buddha way is inconceivable, we vow to attain it. May all beings be well, happy, and safe. Thank you, everyone. Thanks to our audience as well.
Thank you. Good night,
Thank you.
everybody. Thank you, Ole. Thank you, Evgenii. Thank you, Samisha.
Thank you, Brother Sherab.